I didn't grow up in a traditional family. I was 100% my mother's child. I came about through an affair that my mother had when she was married to John Barrett, who was an American geologist who she met in Havana. He took her to live in the jungles of Venezuela on the other side of a very big lake called Maracaibo. And she became very unhappy. On Wednesdays, she would take a ferry boat and go to see an American film. One day she walked into the theater and it was completely empty, and a man walked in behind her and sat next to her and spent the whole movie just looking at her.
I don't know much about what the movie was. And then after we started to talk, and then we met. I fell in love madly and very deeply with her. But it was a little problem. She was married.
I don't think she expected to get pregnant, but she did. My stepfather, who I thought was my biological father, I think that he sensed that something was going on, and he quit his job and moved the family to Gainesville, Florida. My biological father, he waited every week for her to step off that ferry boat, and she stopped coming.
So I was very sad and desolate.
He decided to go to Cuba and look for her family. He saw a very beautiful woman and thought it was my mother, and ran up to her and it was her sister. He started sending my mother letters inside of her letters.
I received a letter and received other letters, and we kept corresponding. And so it went on.
They agreed to meet in Miami Beach, and I was already 6 months old. We spent 6 days there, and that's the only time we were ever a family.
I met the husband, John Barrett. When I proposed that if he is not happy, then my reason being here is to Kalina and the baby and let him live his happy life by himself. He said that he cannot live. He said, you give me your hand that you stop corresponding with us. So I just left and went home, but it was not easy, and I felt a great responsibility for my own son.
After my mother divorced John Barrett, we went to live in Miami Beach, and all of my relatives were coming over from Cuba, and we shared 2 or 3 apartments between all of us. In the 60s and 70s, Miami Beach was really a kind of dangerous place for kids. It seemed that rich or poor kids had access to all kinds of drugs. I think there was something inside of me that realized that I had to succeed, like I had to keep it together, to take care of my mom. We were so poor, our furniture was falling apart all the time. Sometimes we'd have plastic on the furniture to kind of help keep it together. And there was a furniture store where we'd go and sit in each living room and pretend that that was our furniture.
I'm going to introduce you my son.
What's his name?
Desmond Child. What's my name? Mimi of Miami.
I remember many times when my mom's beat-up car was just sitting out in front of the house because there was no gas to put in it, and she'd have to walk 6 or 7 blocks to find a bus to take her to work. I swore that I would not be poor, that somehow I would make it. Even though there were a lot of people around me, I did always feel alone, and I attribute that to having been born gay. I didn't really know why I felt different than everyone else. You somehow feel like a monster, or there's something wrong with you, and you fight it inside yourself. It creates a lot of self-loathing. And it took me a long time to grow out of that alone place. I was lucky because I came of age in the 60s. It was a time of free love and hippie communes and all kinds of gender bending and glam rock and David Bowie with makeup. I started feeling maybe that's the kind of person I am. Maybe I'm a rock star. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to be, because then I can be anything I want to be. At that time, I so wanted to have a girlfriend so that my father would see that I was a healthy young man and somebody that he could admire. Eventually, it wasn't going to work. I got a call from Uncle Joe. He came to see me, and he seemed very kind of tentative and full of emotion. And then he asked me a question. He said, "Do you know why I always come around and why I visit you and why I've always been in your life?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Because I am your father." It was kind of like a Star Wars Luke moment. And he suddenly stood up and tried to hug me, and it was very awkward. And at the same time, I felt like all of a sudden everything in my life made sense.
This is for me and Curtis. That's what I need.